For more than 60 years now, one event has haunted the American psyche more than almost any other: the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. But you know, the real mystery isn't just about who pulled the trigger. The real question is, why has the official story never ever been enough? Why, after all this time, do the doubts refuse to die?
This quote right here, it just nails it. That moment wasn't just about the death of a president. For a whole lot of people, it was the death of a certain kind of trust, an unquestioning belief in their own government. And that feeling, that deep-seated doubt, is really what this story is all about.
So let's just be super clear right up front. We're not here to crack the case or solve the crime once and for all. What we're going to do is, I think, a lot more interesting. We're going to dig into how and why the official story became so hard for so many people to believe. We're going to look at where all this doubt actually came from.
All right, to do that, we have to start at the beginning. We need to understand the definitive story that the US government told the world, a story that, you'll see, came together with incredible speed right after the tragedy.
I mean, just look at how fast this all went down. Within a couple of hours of the shooting, they have a suspect, Lee Harvey Oswald, in custody. But then, just 2 days later, he's shot and killed on live TV. So, to try and calm the chaos, the new president, LBJ, creates the Warren Commission. And less than a year later, they have their final report.
So, in under a year, the government gives its final answer. And it was simple, it was tidy, it was absolute. The Warren report said Lee Harvey Oswald, this disgruntled loner, fired 3 shots from a 6th-floor window, and he did it all by himself. End of story, case closed.
But check this out. Look at the date on this memo. November 25th, 1963. That's just 3 days after the assassination, before any real investigation could have possibly been finished. This memo shows that the government's #1 priority wasn't just finding the truth. It was about establishing a truth, and fast, to calm down a nation that was absolutely terrified.
Okay, so the government had its story, neat and tidy. The problem? Almost right away, people, including people really close to the investigation, started to see some holes in it. And they weren't small holes. They were massive. And the biggest hole of all revolved around something that became known as the single bullet theory. And this wasn't just some minor detail. It was the cornerstone of the whole report. See, to prove Oswald acted alone with just 3 shots, one of those bullets had to do an unbelievable amount of work. Okay, just try to follow the path of this single bullet. It supposedly goes into Kennedy's back, comes out his throat, then hits Governor Connally, who's sitting in front of him. It shatters one of Connally's ribs, exits his chest, breaks his wrist, and then, finally, ends up in his thigh. It's quite a journey.
And here is the real kicker. The bullet that supposedly caused all this mayhem, breaking multiple bones, was found later on a hospital stretcher, and it looked almost perfect, nearly pristine. Right away, ballistics experts started asking, wait a minute, is that even possible?
And you know who else didn't buy it for a second? The guy who actually got hit by it. Governor John Connally, until the day he died, insisted that he was hit by a completely separate bullet. He just flat out did not believe the theory.
The doubt wasn't just coming from the outside, either. Even some of the members of the Warren Commission itself, the very people who wrote the official story, later admitted that they privately had some serious reservations about it all.
But this might be the most stunning part of all. The man who replaced JFK, President Lyndon B. Johnson, the guy who created the Warren Commission, was privately telling reporters that he believed it was a conspiracy. He thought it was probably retaliation from Cuba.
So that's the big question, isn't it? If the people at the very top had all these doubts, why push the story so hard? Well, to understand that, and the decades of secrecy that followed, you have to remember the intense, terrifying pressure of the Cold War. The stakes were just unbelievably high. If it turned out that a foreign power like the Soviet Union or Cuba was behind the assassination, it could have caused mass panic, calls for revenge, and maybe even a nuclear war. Plus, a truly deep investigation might have uncovered some of the CIA's own dirty secrets, like their own plots to kill Fidel Castro. A lone gunman was just safe.
And you know, that need for a simple story became even more obvious years later. By 1979, public distrust was so high that Congress decided to investigate again. And just look at this side by side. The new committee concluded it was probably a conspiracy, with a high probability of 2 gunmen. And they found that the FBI and CIA had basically lied to the first commission. The official story had now officially contradicted itself.
So all this contradiction just fueled the fire, right? It led to massive public pressure, and in 1992, a law was passed forcing the government to finally open up its secret files. It really felt like, for the first time, we were all about to learn the truth.
And we're not talking about a handful of pages here. We are talking about 5 million documents. A flood of information related to the assassination was finally released. So this was it, right? The moment of truth. With millions of new documents, what was the one piece of evidence, the smoking gun, that finally proved there was a grand conspiracy?
Yeah, there wasn't one. After all those pages, all those decades of waiting, no single document laid out a clear plot or named other shooters. But that's not really the story here, because by then, the damage had long been done.
What the files did show, though, was a deeply unsettling pattern of secrecy and cover-ups. We learned the CIA and FBI knew a lot more about Oswald than they let on, that the Secret Service destroyed key evidence, that autopsy records were changed. I mean, the president's actual brain went missing from the National Archives. You can't make this stuff up. It wasn't a smoking gun for a murder, but it sure looked like a smoking gun for a cover-up.
And this is what it all comes down to. This is the real, lasting legacy of the JFK assassination. It's not about the mob, or Cuba, or the Soviets. It's about what happens when people believe they've been lied to.
This right here is the great, powerful irony of this entire story. The government's frantic effort to control the narrative, to stamp out any speculation, was the very thing that guaranteed it would last forever. The cover-up, not the crime itself, is what created a conspiracy theory so powerful it will probably never, ever die.
And that leaves us with a huge question, one that feels more relevant today than ever. When our institutions decide to hide information, even when they think it's for the greater good, do they risk creating a version of the truth that nobody will ever fully trust again?